Um, 7 years I have been a pastor leading a church. Um, the 4 years with someone, and then the 3 years alone. And I failed dismally. Church has been hard, and at the mid of last year, 2024, I gave up. I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And there were so many issues that came up that made me feel like there's no point in me carrying on this endeavor. However, I feel called to continue to serve God in many, many other ways. I want to talk about the book of Romans because through this time that I've been praying and trusting God with my own life and trying to understand what God is doing in our life, I really feel that the book of Romans makes a lot of sense for all of us and for a lot of people. I am going to speak about the book of Romans in context with why Paul wrote the letter. Most people, when they talk about the book of Romans, they speak about the things that Paul said in the letter. They separate the gist or the reason of the letter being written and concentrate on the theological nuances of this letter. I won't be able to do that. I'm sure that many of you have heard all these bombastic words about the book of Romans. So I am going to concentrate on why I think Paul wrote the letter. Paul wrote the letter because the relationship between the Jewish people and the Gentile people in Rome, in the church, had soured. And the reason why the relationship had soured was because in the year 49 AD, Emperor Claudius chased away the Jews from Rome. And the reason he did that was because the Jewish people were fighting against each other. Remember that the Jewish people had synagogues, which were places of worship, where they would read the law and try to interpret and sometimes read the scripture in the prophets. And the Jewish people and the nation of Judaism would not really acknowledge Jesus. However, after the act that happened in Acts chapter 2, many Jewish people believed this Jesus who is called the Messiah. So there was infighting in Rome among Jews themselves over this Christus fella, who is Jesus. Okay. So Claudius said, I don't want bickering here in Rome. Off you go. So he chases all the Jews out, including Christians who were of Jewish descent. For the first time in the history of the church, after more than 50 years, the church had been planted. A church is going to be led by Gentile people on a Gentile ground without any Jews around. You must understand Christianity has its roots from Judaism. So there's a lot of things that were being practiced that had to do with the background of Jewish understanding. This included how they worshipped, included how they ate, included how they dressed. Now that there is no Jews in Rome, the Gentiles, are they going to run free? Are they going to do everything they want? And will that be constituted to be acceptable before God? For more than 14 years, 15 years or so, the Jewish people were not allowed in Rome. At some point, a new emperor came up. His name was Nero, and he took the church. He took the church back. He accepted the Jewish people into Rome. When the Jewish people came back in Rome, the Jewish Christians came to church. When they came to church, they found that the church does not look Jewish at all. And so the fight began. Now, Paul hears this because he's in Corinth, somewhere in Greece, and he writes a letter to address relationships. I failed as a pastor to lead a church because in these organizations that we work with, this is not the only reason. There's many other reasons, some to do with my character and who I am as a person. But the people who lead organizations that try to unite churches sometimes look down on the rest of us as if we are incapable of understanding the gospel. Unfortunately, this has been my experience in the years that I've dealt with cross-cultural Christianity. There's some people who somehow have this feel that it is as if they are closer to God than us. And by us, in this context, I'll talk about African people. So the book of Romans is written to address this issue. To say to the Jewish people, being Jew does not make you better. To tell the Gentiles, being Gentile does not separate you from the Jewish roots of Christianity. How do you maneuver through that? And I think Paul, of course, does a wonderful job to try and deal with issues of religious superiority, racism, discrimination, the modern world in Rome at the time, and the issue of cultural and racial diversity that is present in this church. So both the Jews and the Gentiles had issues that Paul needed to address. I want to read Romans chapter 1.